flow rate meter showed 0. Yesterday it showed 500 gallons per minute. That's when I realized something was catastrophically wrong. The hum of the massive pumps, usually a dull roar that vibrated through the concrete floor, had silenced. I stood in the cavernous heart of the filtration system, deep beneath the public exhibits of the aquarium flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The air, usually thick with the metallic tang of ozone and salt, now just hung heavy and still. This wasn't a power outage. The emergency lights flickered above, casting long skeletal shadows. My phone vibrated, a text from my old client, the CEO of Aquatica Systems, the tech startup that designed and maintained these cutting-edge filtration systems. "Audit going okay, Declan? Just minor stuff, right? Nothing serious." His nervous tone, even in text, was palpable. Minor stuff. This was the opposite of minor. This was a system-wide shutdown. Precisely the kind of catastrophic failure Aquatica Systems prided itself on preventing. And Declan was here, long after closing, not as a system engineer, but as a burnt-out business consultant, reluctantly poking through their financials. A week ago, Declan was ready to walk away from it all. My consulting firm, once my passion, had become a gilded cage. Years of dissecting corporate balance sheets, untangling tax codes, and streamlining operations had left me with a profound sense of emptiness. Declan craved something real, something tangible, away from the sterile glow of spreadsheets and the endless drone of quarterly reports. My plan was simple: take a sabbatical, maybe sail the Mediterranean, or just stare at a wall until inspiration struck. But then the CEO, an old college friend, called. His voice, usually brimming with tech bro confidence, had a tremor. "Declan, look. I know you're busy, but I need you. Small audit, just a quick sanity check before we go public. Nothing major, just a few anomalies. Something a fresh pair of eyes could clear up." He offered a ludicrous sum, enough to fund my escape for a year. Declan saw it as a quick final chore, a means to an end. A few days, Declan told myself. A few days of sifting through digital ledgers, then freedom. The initial numbers had been innocuous enough. A slight dip in projected revenue, an unexpected rise in raw material costs, easily explained away by supply chain issues or market fluctuations. But as I dug deeper, the anomalies started to coalesce into patterns. Payments to a shell company registered in Panama, listed as consulting fees, for an amount that would buy a small island. Then another, smaller one, for proprietary software licensing to an entity in the Caymans. Forensic accounting instincts, long dormant under layers of professional fatigue, began to twitch. This wasn't sloppy bookkeeping, this was carefully orchestrated. Someone was bleeding Aquatica Systems dry and doing it with a frightening degree of precision. "Declan, you still down there?" The CEO's voice crackled through the intercom, sounding strained. "Everything okay?" The security guard said he heard something. I hesitated, my gaze sweeping across the control panels, the rows of inert pumps. "Everything's fine," I lied, the words tasting like ash. "Just a minor glitch." Declan investigating. A minor glitch that had just shut down a multi-million-dollar aquarium's life support system. The thought of what that meant for the marine life, the sheer scale of the potential disaster, made my stomach clench. But the true glitch, Declan suspected, was far more insidious than a faulty sensor. Back in the sterile confines of the CEO's office, the financial data glowed accusingly on my laptop screen. The Panamanian shell company, Azure Holdings, had received payments totaling nearly $10 million over the past 18 months. The Caymans entity, Oceanic Solutions, another $2 million. These weren't minor discrepancies, they were gaping wounds. My initial theory of simple embezzlement began to morph into something more sophisticated, more predatory. I traced the transactions back, painstakingly following the digital breadcrumbs. Each payment was authorized by a specific set of credentials belonging to the company's head of operations, a man named Marcus Thorne. I remembered Marcus from my initial onboarding. Sharp suit, slick back hair, eyes that never quite met yours. He'd given me a perfunctory tour, his explanations of the system's intricacies feeling rehearsed, almost dismissive. He'd even mentioned the aquarium's unique challenges, a veiled reference, I now suspected, to the very vulnerabilities he was exploiting. When I confronted the CEO with my findings, his face went ashen. "Marcus, no, it can't be. He's been with me since day one, my most trusted lieutenant." He looked genuinely shocked, but then a flicker of something else, fear, crossed his features. Are you absolutely sure, Declan? These are serious accusations. The audit trail is clear, I stated, pushing the laptop across the polished desk. Every authorization, every sign-off leads back to his digital signature, and the companies receiving the funds are shell corporations, untraceable except for their registration agents. The CEO ran a hand through his thinning hair. But why? What would he gain? He's already a millionaire from his stock options. He paused, then his eyes narrowed. Wait, you said Oceanic Solutions in the Caymans? That's the name of the project we were working on. The Deep Sea Exploration Tech. The Deep Sea Exploration Tech was Aquatica Systems' crown jewel, their ticket to an even bigger IPO. If Marcus was siphoning funds from that project specifically, the scale of the deception was far greater than I'd imagined. He was the one who found Alex. Alex, I prompted, my mind racing. Alex Chen. He was our lead engineer on the Deep Sea project. Brilliantly talented. A bit eccentric. Always poking around where he shouldn't, asking too many questions. The CEO paused, staring blankly at the wall. He died 3 weeks ago. An accident. Drowned in the filtration system late at night after hours. They said he slipped. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. An engineer, drowned in the very system he helped design, mere weeks before I started uncovering a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme tied to his project. And the man I suspected of the fraud was the one who found him. The zero on the flow meter, the silent pumps, the chemical tang of the aquarium's guts, it all clicked into place. This wasn't just an audit anymore. This was a murder investigation. I requested access to Alex Chen's personnel file, his work computer, anything I could get my hands on. The CEO, now visibly shaken, granted it without argument. Just be careful, Declan, he warned, his eyes darting around the office as if expecting someone to be listening. Marcus, he's a powerful man. Powerful men leave bigger paper trails. I countered, my analytical mind now fully engaged, the burnout forgotten. This was real. This was tangible. And it was dangerous. Alex Chen's office was a shrine to organized chaos. Stacks of schematics, half-eaten energy bars, and a whiteboard covered in complex equations that meant nothing to me. But amidst the clutter, a single pristine notebook lay open on his desk. It wasn't a work log. It was a personal journal, filled with neat, precise handwriting. I flipped through the pages, expecting technical notes, but found instead a series of increasingly agitated observations. Dates, times, and cryptic entries. Anomaly in Project Hydra budget 12% discrepancy. Question Marcus on vendor selection, vague answer. Feeling watched. My work is too important to quit. The last entry, dated the day before his death, simply read, They know I know. Meet me at the main pump control after closing. Don't tell anyone. My stomach tightened. Alex wasn't just poking around, he was actively investigating. He knew something and he was trying to expose it. And he had arranged a meeting late at night in the very location where he subsequently drowned. The official report stated he slipped on a wet floor, hit his head, and fell into a maintenance tank. But the journal painted a different picture, a rendezvous, a confrontation, and then I decided to visit Alex's apartment. It felt like an invasion of privacy, but the police had already cleared it, deeming his death an accident. I wasn't the police, and my investigation wasn't bound by their conclusions. The building manager, a gruff man with tired eyes, remembered Alex. Quiet fellow, kept to himself, always working late. Let me in, the air inside still stale. It smelled faintly of old coffee and ozone. His apartment was meticulously clean, a stark contrast to his office. No signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I moved through the rooms, my eyes scanning for anything out of place, anything the police might have missed. In his living room, a small aquarium bubbled softly, a single vibrant blue tang darting amongst artificial coral. On a shelf above it, I noticed a framed photo, Alex smiling next to a woman with bright, intelligent eyes. His wife, I presumed. She wasn't mentioned in the police report. Declan found his laptop in his bedroom, neatly placed on his nightstand. It was locked, of course, but beside it, an old, dusty external hard drive. Declan plugged it into my own laptop, hoping for a miracle. The drive whirred to life, a treasure trove of data. Not just personal photos, but encrypted files labeled Project Hydra Irregularities and Marcus T. Communications. Alex had been building a case. He wasn't just an engineer. He was a forensic auditor in the making, driven by a fierce loyalty to his work and I suspected a strong moral compass. The encryption was formidable, but Alex had left a clue in his journal, a series of numbers that, when cross-referenced with the dates of the suspicious transactions, revealed a passphrase. It was a complex alphanumeric string, but after a few hours of intense focus, the files unlocked. What I found was a meticulously documented timeline of Marcus Thorne's financial malfeasance, detailing every suspicious payment, every shell company, every offshore transfer. Alex had even managed to trace some of the funds to a private account in Switzerland, registered under a series of initials, MT. This wasn't just embezzlement. It was a sophisticated money laundering operation, likely tied to corporate espionage. The Project Hydra funds weren't just being stolen, they were being diverted to a competitor, slowly siphoning off Aquatica Systems' intellectual property. Alex had pieced it all together, and he had been about to expose it. But the most damning piece of evidence wasn't financial. It was a series of audio files recorded on Alex's phone. I clicked on the latest one, dated the night of his death. Static, then the faint sound of dripping water followed by two voices. Alex's clear and strained. "Know what you're doing, Marcus. This isn't just about money. You're giving away years of our work." Then Marcus's voice, low and menacing. "You should have stayed out of it, Alex. Some things are bigger than your precious work." A struggle, a splash, a choked gasp. Alex hadn't slipped. He had been murdered, and Declan had just listened to it happen. The audio file was a gut punch. The CEO's words echoed in my mind. He was the one who found Alex. Of course he was. He was the one who put him there. Declan spent the next 2 days in a self-imposed lockdown, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the grim determination that had once defined my career. Alex's hard drive was a goldmine. It contained not only the audio confession, but also encrypted schematics of Aquatica Systems' proprietary deep-sea exploration technology, clearly marked as having been shared with Oceanic Solutions, the very Cayman Islands shell company that Marcus had set up. This wasn't just embezzlement. It was a wholesale theft of intellectual property, likely to be sold to a rival. The consulting fees to Azure Holdings in Panama were probably kickbacks for facilitating the transfer of funds and data. My phone rang, a blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. Declan speaking. A distorted voice, clearly masked, spoke. "You're getting too close, consultant. Some things are best left buried." The line went dead. My heart hammered against my ribs. They knew. Marcus, or whoever was pulling his strings, knew I was onto them. The anonymous call was a clear message: back off or else. But backing off wasn't an option anymore. Not after listening to Alex's last moments. Not after seeing the depth of this betrayal. My burnout, my desire for escape had evaporated. This was real, and it demanded justice. I tried to call the CEO, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I left a terse message. "We need to talk now. It's about Marcus and Alex." I knew he was in too deep, probably terrified of what exposing Marcus would do to his company, his IPO, his entire future. But he had to know the truth. I needed help, but who could I trust? The police had already ruled Alex's death an accident. Going to them with an anonymous audio file and a dead man's encrypted hard drive would be met with skepticism, at best. I needed someone who understood the intricacies of corporate fraud, someone who could see the pattern in the chaos. I thought of an old colleague, Sarah, a sharp-witted forensic accountant who had left the corporate world years ago to start her own independent firm. He had a reputation for taking on impossible cases, for seeing through the most elaborate deceptions. He was my only hope. I called her, explaining the situation in clipped, urgent sentences. "Sarah, I've got a murder, corporate espionage, and a multi-million-dollar fraud. Is that really you? I thought you were sailing off into the sunset." Her voice was calm, but I could hear the gears turning. "A murder, you say, and you have proof, audio proof, and a dead man's hard drive that maps the whole scheme." "Send me everything," he said, him voice firm, professional. "Declan'll be in my office. Don't go anywhere." I began compiling all the evidence onto a secure encrypted drive, making multiple copies. The financial spreadsheets, the shell company registrations, Alex's journal entries, the audio files, the shared schematics, every piece of the puzzle. As I worked, my mind raced, trying to anticipate Marcus's next move. If he knew I was onto him, he wouldn't just sit idly by. Declan sent the first batch of encrypted files to Sarah, along with a secure key. Her immediate response was a single word: unbelievable. A few minutes later, another message: the sheer audacity. This is bigger than I thought. Any idea who's backing him? Not yet, Declan typed back, but I'm looking at the flow of the stolen IP, the deep-sea tech. That's the real prize here, not just the money. My fingers flew across the keyboard, connecting the dots. The money was a means to an end, a way to fund the pilfering of Aquatica Systems' most valuable asset. The rival company that stood to gain the most from this theft would be the ultimate beneficiary, the true mastermind behind Marcus. As I dug deeper, the sheer scale of the operation became terrifyingly clear. The stolen schematics weren't just being funneled to Oceanic Solutions, they were being rebranded, slightly altered, and then pitched as new innovations by a competitor based in Asia. A company that had recently surged in the market, seemingly out of nowhere, with technology eerily similar to Aquatica's. Marcus wasn't just working for himself. He was a pawn in a much larger game of corporate espionage, selling his company's future for a hefty price. Suddenly, the lights in my temporary office at Aquatica Systems flickered, then died completely. The emergency lights didn't come on. This wasn't a power outage, this felt deliberate. My heart pounded. They weren't just threatening me anymore, they were coming for me. No answer. Declan tried again, still nothing. My stomach dropped. Had they gotten to her, or was this just a sophisticated way to isolate me? Declan knew Declan couldn't stay here. I had the evidence, but I needed to get out, and I needed to do it fast. I quickly shut down my laptop, grabbing the external drive and shoving it into my pocket. My mind raced, trying to remember the layout of the building, the emergency exits, anything that could give me an advantage. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the frantic rhythm of my own breathing. Then, a faint click from the hallway outside my office. The sound of a door being gently, deliberately opened. They were here. I flattened myself against the wall, my hand instinctively reaching for the heavy stapler on my desk. It was a pathetic weapon against an unseen enemy, but it was all I had. The adrenaline surged, sharpening my senses, pushing away the last vestiges of my old, burnt-out self. This wasn't about numbers anymore. This was about survival. A sliver of light appeared under the office door, then disappeared. Flashlight beam sweeping the hallway. Declan held my breath, every muscle tense. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, approaching my door. My mind screamed for a plan, any plan, but all Declan could hear was the frantic beat of my own heart. My eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route, a weapon, anything. The window was too high, the door was blocked. Declan was trapped. I heard everything. His silhouette seemed to stiffen. A dead man's ramblings, hardly admissible. He took a step into the room, the wrench glinting ominously in the faint light. "You're a consultant, Declan. You audit numbers, you don't play detective. And you're a thief and a murderer," Declan countered, my voice hardening. "You stole from your friend and you killed a good man for trying to stop you." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Friendship is a luxury I can't afford, and Alex was an inconvenience just like you." He lunged, the wrench arcing towards my head. The crash echoed loudly in the silent building. Declan used the brief distraction to dive under the desk, pressing myself against the wall. He cursed, kicking at the chair. Declan could hear his heavy breathing, the scrape of his shoes on the carpet. He was bigger, stronger, and clearly unhinged. My